Hello there, Johnny Lunch Bucket once again, speaking to you from our favorite spot to speak, and that's down by the river in North Georgia on a beautiful afternoon. Bright sun, leaves are falling, it's just perfect. And thank you, Lord, for this day. And I want to talk to you today about the things that God lets us do as a sigh of relief. And I was thinking about this the other day, and it just really rang a bell with me, and I'd like to pass it on to you. But in our lives, there's not many days that really makes a difference. I mean, truly makes a difference. A decision is made that sends you in a direction other than what you maybe originally thought of. But I got to thinking about just what it's like when a crisis comes or something comes, and then you get relief from that. And I always just call that a sigh of relief. It is total relief. It's happened. And so I was thinking about some of those events, and as a young man, we think about, well, I got to finish high school. Well, when you get that diploma, there's a sigh of relief. You got it. And so on and so forth. When you get your driver's license, there's a sigh of relief. I got it. Then you get to go to college, there's a sigh of relief that goes with that. And but one of my very first major sighs was coming home from Vietnam. And naturally I'd been there a year, but it really in my mind plotted what it would be like when I got home. And you're tense, you're all the things that, on steroids, you're tense. And you're thinking about getting home. And I'll never forget about the 2 days, the whole transition from Vietnam to home. And I got home on a Friday night at 3 o'clock, or Saturday morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning. And but somehow that had been in my mind all the time I was in Vietnam. I'm going to get home on a Friday night, Saturday morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to see my parents. I'm going to hug my mom, da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, it happened to where that's exactly how it turned out. But en route, and when you're in country, in a combat zone, you get in a period you're called a short timer. In other words, it's not long before you get to de-roast out and go home. Well, during that time, you get very tense, and so many people die the last week in a combat zone. Somehow the first and the last week is the most critical. But we were there going through the process, and we come out of An Khê, Vietnam, and the 173rd Airborne and the 1st Cav were both there. And we were flying to Cam Ranh Bay to get to come home the next day. So we go down to the airstrip. There's 2 C-130s on that on the strip, and the 173rd is assigned to the first one, and the 1st Cav to the second. So we get on the aircraft, and everybody on there is excited but nervous. We're going home. So plane takes off, and we're hooping and hollering and whatever we're doing, but it lands in Cam Ranh Bay, and we get off the aircraft, and we just got tonight, and we're leaving for home in the morning. But when we got off the plane, we were told that the aircraft behind us on takeoff flew into the mountain there in An Khê and killed everybody on board. And oh my Lord, it's sad. That was sad. And but it intensified the thoughts of I'm going home. So now it's the next day, and we get on that 707, and we're flying out, and every little screech, crack, whatever, you're alert. I'm going home. It's home. Anyway, we came through, and we landed and refueled a couple of times, and wind up in Seattle, Washington. Get all decked out, ready to go home. Land again in Chicago, Illinois. Change planes. and we're on a Delta flight to Atlanta. So we fly into Atlanta, and that's all cool, beautiful landing. Got in a taxi cab to take us down to Jonesboro, Georgia. A friend of mine was with me because he had no home to go to, so I brought him home with me. And but when we got down there and we got to King Arthur Court in Jonesboro, Georgia, we stopped that taxi up at the top of the cul-de-sac to walk down to the house. This was exciting. So we walked down, walked up on the porch, rang the doorbell, and here come Mom and Dad thundering through the house, opened the door, and I reached in and grabbed my dad's hand and shaking it as I was hugging my mom. But ladies and gentlemen, there was a real sigh of relief. And it couldn't happen till I did that, till I got there. There was no relief. But that God gut said, you're home. You're safe. Stress, tension goes away. Well, in business, I've had a lot of moments that I needed a sigh of relief, need to make a payroll, dotted anything. But then came my first child. My wife was pregnant, and back in that day, they would not let us go into the delivery room. We had to sit out in the waiting room while they delivered the baby, and they came in and told us. Well, I sat there with some family and friends, and again, it's strange, but it was 3 o'clock in the morning. That doctor comes out, and as soon as he walked through the door, there's all that, here it comes, and so he walks up to us and says, you've got a beautiful, healthy baby girl, and your wife is in great shape. That sigh. It was awesome. And the other 3 children, there was a sigh of relief, but I was in the delivery room with them, so there was a little different feeling. And so on a lot of things through life, but then the biggest sigh of relief I've ever had, including Vietnam, was in November of 2016. I had never been so depressed and stressed about my country like I was at that time. I love this country. I love it. And I swore an oath that I would die protecting it if that was necessary back in 1966. And that oath never did go away. But I'm telling you, and for the first time in my life, I worked a presidential election, because in my God gut, there was no way that we could survive if Hillary Clinton got in office. And I felt that strong about it. I mean, strong. And so we sat, and I'm listening to the news, and ironic, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's an announcement. The President of the United States is Donald Trump. Truthfully, that's the biggest sigh of relief I've ever had. And from that day to this, I really was wondering why I was so stressed over that. I mean, really wondered why. And now I know. 3 years later, if Donald Trump hadn't got elected, our democracy was in the toilet, flushed down and gone. These corrupt son of a guns was taking over this country. Well, they have taken over. But that was the biggest sigh of relief ever. And from a man that they ain't no way in the world he was going to win that election. Whole world knew it. And they still can't believe it, but he won it. And that was God, but it was also Donald Trump's tenacity. I don't know what his God gut is like. I know mine. It's kept me alive all of my life, and I don't argue with it. When it's saying there's danger, I look and find the danger. When it's okay, I'm going to smile and get on with it. But I want to take just a minute, and there's no way to say it with my mouth. I'm not intelligent enough. But I would like to be able to stand in front of Donald Trump and say thank you. from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And then now, 3 years later, Mr. Trump, I thank you for your tenacity. I'm exactly the same age you are. I've been self-employed all my life. I've had over 8,000 employees, been up and down, made money, lost money, been a terrible father, terrible husband. Ain't no other way in the world you can talk about all the bad I've done. But this guy has got more energy than anybody I've ever seen. And inside him, I would love to sit down and analyze his exit strategy, what his thoughts were. And for years before he was ever president, because of what he's done as a businessman, I did a lot of thinking about what would Donald Trump do in this situation or that. But ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have a God gut, you don't understand this. But it don't lie. It does not lie. And when it's telling you something, react, listen. It is absolutely critical. Again, I don't know, Mr. President, if you'll ever see this, but thank you from the depths of my heart. And I think from the majority of combat veterans, they'd be the same way. Again, have a great day, the rest of you. We'll talk to you next time.